So, I've been working on a small project in my spare time for a couple years now when I found this. Most English spelling reforms are bad, by, hopefully pronouncing it right, Misali, where I find out I'm not the only one with this project. Not even close. If you haven't watched Jan's video, then I'd highly recommend doing so first to get better context. With that said, some of Jan's points are certainly valid. Goatee or fish is the dumbest thing I've heard in a long while. English doesn't actually work like that, not with these exaggerated examples. No, spelling reforms shouldn't be unintuitive or irregular. That goes against the entire idea of a good reform. And without a doubt, making a new alphabet is just cheating. Getting people to switch the spoken part of the language would be impossible, and almost just as much so to switch all the symbols for it. Wow, I thought there was more than 3 points I agreed with. Anyway, everything else in that video actually makes me cringe or become physically frustrated. It has been demonstrated to no end how broken English spelling is. The number one complaint from foreigners learning English is its horrible use of spelling, at least from what I've heard personally. Not to mention, it's certainly the number one complaint from native English speakers. I mean, we're arguing about it right now. How many other languages do that on a regular basis? You've said, for the most part you can easily derive pronunciation from spelling, and sure, you absolutely would not be able to guess from pronunciation alone that, say, phlegm is pronounced phlegm. But that doesn't make it bad spelling. I've never heard a more self-contradicting statement said so seriously. Spelling and pronunciation not matching is where you get the whole idea of what bad spelling is. P-H-L-E-G-M is bad spelling. The redundancy and therefore unnecessariness of the PH and the G are ridiculous. Tell me, why can't we just spell it F-L-E-M? Sure, it can help show how it's related to phlegmatic. Yes, but in all honesty, why is that important? If we changed it, you'd still be able to see that it's related. Yes, there'd be a one-letter difference on the base of the word, but I would expect most to be able to see the connection. Phlegm and phlegmatic are almost just as noticeably related as their counterparts. When you say minor tweaks are the least effective type of spelling reform, well, I'm not actually quite sure whether I agree with you or not. I'll admit that I'm not highly educated in language phonetics like these. However, if you're only talking about changing certain spelling rules, like the example you gave of RE to ER, then yes, this method is quite ineffective. But to me, you really sound like you believe that small tweaks to the basic rules can't go a long way. I'm here to show that they can. You complain about a spelling form being written as though it could become the new default, but why are you so adamant about reforms not being viable? You've told everyone that their spelling reform will not replace English, but how could you ever know that? One person can do a lot to an entire language. We've seen that from your W video. On more than one occasion, one person or one small group of people have made a massive difference. Okay, yes, everyone knows the benefits of these changes, no one argues that. But I can't help but feel that you're one of the few that honestly believe change isn't possible. Why do you think that we, as a society, maybe even in 100 years, if that's what it would take, couldn't make a few changes to the basics? Would it really be that hard to change the elementary books and a couple of a teacher's lessons? The last point of yours I want to try and counter is your increasingly frustrating Venn diagram. I have no idea why you think any of those pairings seem to work just fine, but as soon as you mix all three to become ASCII compatible, fully phonetic, and visually appearing, it's suddenly a flat no. You honestly think there's absolutely no middle ground? Well, you're wrong, and here's why some forms are good. Getting all three of these points is actually quite easy, especially considering the visually appealing aspect is completely subjective. You only need to keep it ASCII compatible and fully phonetic. English already does this by itself, however unguided. From there, as long as a main portion of the language still looks similar and is easily readable while being mostly intuitive, then being visually appealing comes automatically. There's only a few points that you really need to accomplish all that. Use letters already from English, and if needed, adopt a few letters from other languages, all of which can be gotten via ASCII codes. Remove redundancy and other useless features. Keep most of the core rules and spellings mostly intact. Keep any changes clear and easy to follow. Have all sounds have one spelling and all spellings have one sound. Pronunciation shouldn't be ambiguous. The first and the last 3 points of that list are easy enough to follow. They're more or less guidelines for where to start. But what do I mean about redundancy and useless features? I mean letters that are literally just replacements for other letters. Beyond mishaps like PH and silent letters, there is most notably C, X, and Q that don't make unique sounds. In every use, they can be replaced, most often with K, KS, and KW respectively. A great example of this are words that start with EX. You know, the words that have a syllable break in the middle of the letter because it's really a K and an S. Words like exist or expired. But there's still the biggest problem of them all. A problem that even you, Jan, for some reason, still incorporate into your own reforms. The most frustrating thing to ever run into and try to learn, the most confusing and most useless feature of any language, diphthongs. The absolutely insane idea that putting two particular letters together create their own unique sound. PH and TH being the two that most think of right away. One is just another arbitrary replacement for the letter F, and the other actually being previously removed of its status as its own letter. That's right, TH or thorn used to be its own letter, and you can actually still see its remnants today. So I bring you my English reform, from before I ever knew what a reform was. Step 1 was obvious, as I stated just now. Get rid of C, X, and Q. Limit letters with multiple sounds. Letters like Y only make one sound. Specifically, Y is also never a vowel. Limit vowels to have only 2 sounds, to no longer be mimicking each other, and create a visual difference between long and short vowels. Remove or replace all diphthongs. The vowels were easy enough to change. Long vowels now have umlauts because the differences need to be obvious. Though because old habits die hard, in some cases it's a little unexpected what sound they make. That the word R would now be spelled OR, but once you remember they now only make their sounds, it becomes quite obvious. But what about all the diphthongs, I hear you ask from the future? There's so many, and we can't make new letters for all of them, right? Ah, but that's where you're wrong. In part. Only 5 diphthongs have unique sounds. All others are just sounds that other letters already make. What are these 5, you time travelers keep asking me? Well, TH, CH, SH, and the 2 forms of OO. Yes, 2 forms. It took me a while to realize how exactly the middle parts of spoon and book are pronounced differently. The middle of book is kind of pronounced like mashing the letters U and I into one letter. Ugh. Although no single letter or letter combination forms it. Okay, but how do I suggest these get represented as the wormhole behind me starts piling you guys out? A seemingly weird but surprisingly effective solution. We just reuse the C, X, and Q. CH already uses the C, and SH is very similar to it, so they become the only non-vowel exception to get an umlaut. SH gets the umlaut. Q already half looks like what happens when mashing two O's together, becoming the sixth vowel. OO from book being slightly less common and receiving the umlaut form. And the only one left is the X and TH, which are all kind of already made out of straight capital letters, and it creates half a cross in your mouth from being pronounced anyway. In layman's terms, these are the 6 basic changes. After forcing letters to limit their sounds, these other 6 basic rules are the only changes I propose, and it seems to work quite well. Many words don't even change or are minorly tweaked with their vowels. And some words aren't as intuitive and look a little odd, like the word the becoming XU, but if you know the changes, then it's quite easy to get used to. This is why I believe not all spelling reforms are bad, and I'm not going to just sit here and claim that I'm a glorious genius and that we all have to switch to my reform, but this is a good demonstration. Now, why have I spent about 2 years on this reform? Surely I've had more than enough free time to write less than a page of information, right? Well, I've been slowly working on a translation table, and I use that word loosely. I've heard that the 5,000 most commonly used words would cover 95% of daily speech, so I've used wordcount.org to start listing them and their proper spellings. I've gotten about 1,000 done. So yeah, links to all of these down below. I also have a script that allows you to type the umlauts quite easily just by pressing Alt and the letter, or Alt Shift and the letter. It's quite useful. So yeah, I don't officially do YouTube yet, but if people subscribe and leave comments, I can do other videos about other topics. Well, I'll see ya.